Sharon, thanks for inviting me along today. Sharon and I both attend BX Networking here at Parramatta, and I delivered a training the other day called the 1000% Formula. And what we've learned is that if you want to become more successful, you've got to do it in small incremental improvements. Most people want to become a millionaire immediately, and you're probably all on Facebook and you see these advertisements: become a 6-figure speaker like magic, or you can become a 7-figure speaker like magic. But all things take time. So what we've learned over the past 20 years of research is that emotional intelligence is one of your biggest predictors of success. Have you heard that term before? Emotional intelligence? What we've got is we've got social IQ. So we've got emotional IQ, which we really put in the box of ourself. And then the other part of emotional IQ is exactly what you're saying. It's the ability to look at other people. And we'll come to this in a moment. It's empathy. It's being able to look at somebody and to be able to read their emotional makeup. And your clients, they tell half-truths. Where's the petty cash? I'm not quite sure. So when you hear the word quite sure, so there's a level of sureness there, but it's just a little bit. So it's for us to be able to look at our customers and say, well, what do we do about this? What types of questions do we ask? And then of course you've got social skills, which is once you read the emotional makeup of the other person, then you can speak to them and make suggestions. Because most people have fears of criticism, fears of rejection. They're embarrassed about their numbers. My mother-in-law is an accountant, and she tells me all the time, people hide their numbers, they fudge their figures. And so your job is to be empathetic and to understand that they do have troubles, and then to be able to communicate in a way where there's no judgment. And write down this word. You might want to write it on the back of your paper. Write down the word unconditional positive regard. Unconditional positive regard. And this is really what we want to achieve with our clients. In psychology, we call this a place where the client can tell you anything without fear of shame or embarrassment or criticism or rejection. And the safer that you can create that environment, the more information they'll give you. And you know, after years of working with somebody, they tell you all the things.
We get everything.
Yes, you know, about
really
the extramarital affairs and the tool shop, but you're not in construction, you're going to the tool shed where they're spending their money. You know those places.
Yes.
We owned a pawn shop for 17 years. Not that pawn shop, the other one, where you'd buy and sell second-hand goods. And people would come in and they'd borrow money, and then just up the street there was a place called 319A, and that was the brothel. And they'd get the cash, and then the wives would say, my husband keeps pawning things here. Can you help us? I'm sorry, I can't. But we'll talk about the 5 pillars of emotional intelligence. So the first one is self-awareness. So number 1 is self-awareness. And this is the ability to understand why you think and feel the way that you do. This is about knowing what you want in your life. What do you want from your career? And most people start a job, most people start something in their life, and they're really not sure why they're doing this. And they go through the motions. They come to work, they're really not sure where they want to go. Even they go to university and they're really not sure what they want. But if you have a higher level of self-awareness, you can clearly understand your wants and desires in life. And only about 36% of the population can understand their thoughts and their feelings at any given time. Only 3% of the population know what they want, and they have plans on how to obtain that. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
14% of the population, they have ideas, but it's just a dream. And then the other 84%, what happens here, well, my numbers were wrong, you're accountants, it's 3%, 13% and 84%, is that 84% just don't know what they want. And they're like a ship without a rudder. They just get blown from this side to that side. Tide goes out, tide comes in. And the only thing that rises them up is the incoming tide. And then when the tide goes out, they sink back down. So your job in life is to understand what you want. What do you want from your career? You don't have to think about what's happening 20 years from now. What do you want this year? And you make that your major defining purpose. And everything you do in business just keeps going towards that. And what you'll find is that humans, they underestimate what they can achieve in a lifetime, and overestimate what they can achieve in a year. So just decide what you want 1 year from now and put all of your energies towards that. And if you improve your performance by 0.1% per day, at the end of the year, you can be 26% better than you are today. Now, for you, emotional intelligence, if you improve your emotional intelligence by 1%, by 1 point, you can have a corresponding increase in salary, we'll look at the boss for this one, by $1,750. Because what we know is that if you can earn more, it means you're more profitable in the business. And we've seen people, single women with children, raise their income by 50% every year just by being able to understand what they want and how to get it and have plans and then read other people more effectively. So it can be done. The second part of emotional intelligence is self-regulation. You might have heard the expression before, I've got a devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other, and you have that little niggling voice that says, they can achieve it, but you can't. They're older than you, they've got more experience than you. I wasn't born here, I was born somewhere else. So all these reasons I can't succeed. What we've got to be able to do is we've got to be able to regulate that voice. And that means stop that voice. Because most people, and we spoke about this the other day, the average person in the population will give up on their goals before the very first attempt. And it's because they talk themselves out of it. See, what we know in sales is that 80% of sales are made after the 13th contact with the person. But the same in sales. Most salespeople give up before they even ask. So they'll go through a whole presentation, they'll bring in their people, sit them around the table, and they'll say, so what do you think?
Yeah.
And the person says, I need to think about it. And the reason why they say I need to think about it is because they didn't ask the question, would you like to take this? So your job in your life is to decide what you want, and then you just have to develop discipline and persistence and keep attempting that thing that you want over and over until you get it. So decide what you want, and then secondly, determine what price are you willing to pay to have that. And if you do those two things, you can be guaranteed of anything that you ever want. I wanted to become an Australian champion athlete. I started water skiing at the age of 4. It took me till 26 years of age to achieve my goal of being Australian champion. Just 22 years. That was an overnight success. But what happened? At 16, I said I want to be an Australian champion, and every year between 1996 to 2006, I broke a bone every single year. I was knocked out, I was concussed, I was in hospital, I had a virus. And every time the World Championships and the Australian Championships come around, I got injured. But I didn't let it stop me. Even one year I was in my peak and I went to a birthday party. I wasn't drinking, I was the designated driver. I walked in, walked out, a car stopped, 6 people hopped out and beat the crap out of me with cricket bats and cricket stumps. Ended up in hospital for a week and had plates put in my arm. So these are the obstacles you're going to have on the way to your goal. But you can't let these little things stop you. But eventually I'll get there. And that's self-regulation. You've got to be able to regulate those thoughts. You've got to stop those doubts. When you see that donut and your belly says, eat that, and the other brain says, don't eat that. So two men in the room and 6 ladies. Have you heard about women's intuition? Have you heard about that before?
Of course.
Well, in the studies that men's and women's intuition is identical. Women's intuition is not any better than men's. But you know the difference between men and women? Women listen to theirs and men don't. Have you ever made a good decision in your life where you've gone against your intuition? Never works out, does it?
No.
Never works out. So this is part of self-regulation. It's being able to get that little message from your intuition and say, I either need to stop doing that or start doing this. And if you do that, you become incredibly successful. Is that making sense so far?
Yep.
Excellent. The third part is motivation. Motivation is resiliency. It's the ability to get a no and keep going. It's the ability to fail and keep moving forward. And as Sharon would know, after years in business, you're going to fail twice and 3 times more than you're going to succeed. But that one success can outweigh all the failures that come before. in Hollywood, they say that 9 out of 10 shows that end up on Broadway fail. But that one that succeeds is so profitable that it becomes a worldwide success. And you hear about these successes. Have you heard about The Lion King? Have you heard about Phantom of the Opera? Have you heard about Mamma Mia? See, these three have been going for 20 and 30 years. And just one success is enough to overcome all those failures. So as you develop your career, you're going to have a lot of setbacks. And it's just your ability to get back up. And there's an old Japanese proverb that says, fall down 8 times, get back up 9 times. And if you can understand that life is hard, that life is unfair, that people are going to go against you, if you can accept that and then just keep persisting in the face of all that, eventually you'll succeed. And sometimes in your field, and a lot of businesses, it's just the survival of the fittest. It's the person who can just stand up just that little bit longer that wins all the business. Because 80% of businesses fail every year. You see this. But if you can just be in that 81, that extra 1% who doesn't, you get to win all of their customers. And if you can just stand up another year longer, you get to win all of those customers. And then for most self-made millionaires, after 20 years of doing hard work, they wake up and they're incredibly successful. The highest income earning years of your life will be at about 40 to 45, statistically, because you've had 20 years of working out what not to do. Does that make sense?
Past that.
You're coming into your prime. So that's emotional intelligence, and they're the 3 things that are most important to you. And let me wrap up that section by saying is that when you improve your self-awareness, you'll know exactly what you want. And when you're clear of what you want, you become unstoppable. When you can turn off that inner critic, that voice that says you're too young, the competition is too big, when you can shut that voice off, then you'll succeed in persistence to all those obstacles. And the final one is motivation. And if you refuse to quit, ultimately, you must succeed. Because I've never seen a successful person who has quit. Have you?
No.
Never. I only see successful people who never quit. And you can do that in your own life. And it doesn't matter whether it be you want to be a mum or a wife and you're looking for the perfect partner. Keep going. At my wedding, I made a speech in front of my wife and they said, Daniel, tell us about your relationship. I said, well, a relationship is like a game of Dungeons and Dragons. You've got to slay a lot of dragons before you get the princess. And they looked at me and went, oh, you can't say that. And my wife turned around and she said, well, I kissed a lot of frogs before I got the prince. And so you've got to keep dating. You've got to keep looking for new customers. Now this next part, individual human potential, this is one of the greatest formulas that I've ever discovered. And I keep coming back to this throughout my life. And I keep asking myself, what can I achieve in my life? What can I do with my life? There's a thing called the death postcode. And the average person is born and dies within 25 kilometres of where they were born because of the comfort zone. Have you heard of that, the comfort zone? They say, I know everybody here, there's no threat, I'm just going to stay in this little town and I'm safe and protected.
That's my best friend. She hasn't left.
But you've got to leave the comfort zone. And you can achieve so much more than you think you can. So the first part of the individual human potential formula is IA. That means inborn attributes. So on that first line, those 2 spaces, write inborn attributes. Your inborn attributes are your unique characteristics. It's the way that you look. It's the languages that you speak. It's the way that you think. It's the qualities that you got from your mother's side of the family. It's the qualities that you got from your father's side of the family. Now I come from an educated family, an uneducated family. My father was a farmer. He got rheumatic fever when he was 9 and really never went to school. He had no teeth till he was 19 and he used to work 5 miles to and from school every day. My mother, her father was in the Air Force and they travelled around the country. He moved overseas, he went to war. But they learned to build multi-million-dollar businesses with no education. So 2 of my inborn attributes is this farmer's work ethic. My father, I'm 39, I have seen him get up at 5 a.m. in the morning. He will work till 7 o'clock at night. A lot of times not eating. He'll have his dinner at 7, He'll go back and farm and do work till 11 p.m. Then he'll come back, sleep, and he's done that for as long as I can remember. 30 years I can remember this happening. And so this attribute is in me. I get up at 5 in the morning. I spend 3 weeks away from my family every month, and I work and work and work till the job's done. And I get up and go in again. This is not something you can learn out of a book. It's not something you can learn at university. It just exists in my blood. My mother, on the other hand, their family just builds multi-million-dollar businesses, and they're uneducated. They build Woolworths shopping centres. They run big real estate firms. And so I've got this eye in my business to build a multi-million-dollar business, and it just exists in me. And you have these same things. So what I'd like you to do on that space next to Inborn Attributes, I want you to write down one attribute that you've acquired from your mother. It could be a unique look that people say, wow, that's so exotic. That gets attention, and they ask, where are you from? It could be a certain quality like persistence. Maybe your maybe your mother was exceptionally good in her career, and she just showed up every day and delivered $1 million service. And maybe it's something from your father. It could be that you speak the Nepalese language. Perhaps you have this language that enables you to do more business with different people in the country. So write down 2 inborn attributes, and then we'll share them.
What I get from him.
Stubbornness is positive and negative, and if we use the positive side of stubbornness to our advantage, then it's an excellent inborn attribute. So we say that we have within us all the resources that we need to succeed, but most of the time we just don't know how to use it. Have you ever found a dress in your cupboard that you haven't worn for a while and you're like, oh my gosh, I love this one. My wife got on
I did it last week.
on Zoom the other day and she said, look at this dress I'm wearing. I said, babe, you look hot. She says, I bought this in Hawaii when I was 19 and she's 40 now.
How big is her wardrobe?
Pardon?
How big is her wardrobe?
Oh, huge. That's her handbag. I stole her Louis Vuitton. Yeah, I said, that's a great bag. And she says, oh, this is a Speedy 45. They don't make this model anymore. I said, can I have it? She said, no. And I said, but you got 20 in your wardrobe.
Oh.
Can't you just give me one? She's like, well, what do I get in return?
There's always a payoff.
She's smart.
Yep. So she sent my mum a beautiful Gucci handbag the other day. And I said, did you negotiate? She said, why would I do that? It's mum.
Oh.
And I said, if you give something, you've got to ask for something back, a concession. And I said, you should ask for her yellow diamond ring. My mum's got a nice big 2-carat yellow diamond ring. And I said to mum, did she negotiate? And she said, no. I said, well, you give me the yellow diamond ring, I'll take that as collateral, which we used to be pawnbrokers, and I'll take it back to Taiwan. Okay, what's one of your inborn attributes? They call this the rudder of the day. And that first hour of your day, from the first thought you have in your mind, will determine your outcomes. And we'll talk about that in the law of self-control. So in the studies of self-made millionaires and self-made billionaires, all of these people have affirmations, and it's the first words that they speak to themselves. So when my alarm clock goes off, I just do what successful people do, and I say to myself, I believe something wonderful is going to happen to me today. And see, I just keep saying this for 9 minutes over and over and over and again. And then what happens is I open up my emails at about 8 o'clock, somebody new wants to work with me, I'm getting a recommendation over here, I'm invited to speak. And all these things happen to me. And what happens, it programs your reticular activation system.
That lady that,
So the first thought of unsuccessful people, they wake up in the morning and go, shit, I'm late. Oh my gosh, I slept in. Oh no, I don't want to be late, I don't want to be late, I don't want to be late, I don't want to be late.
Yeah.
What's the traffic
jams
at 10 past? Cooking poached eggs at 10 past 8. And I was like, come on, we've got to get to work.
Yeah. And see, that first thought, it puts you into the fear response. So there's one thing in common between us and the smallest living organism, and it's to survive. But how do you survive? You avoid danger. So you go, oh shit, I don't want to be late. And the first programming is, I don't want to be late. And then what happens? Law of attraction, you get caught behind the slowest driver, you get all the red lights, the car doesn't have enough petrol, you've run out of coffee. And so your job is to choose your thoughts, and this exists in you, and you just make sure you use it continually. Because Henry Ford said, you become what you think about most of the time. If you think successful thoughts, you become successful. If you think failure thoughts, then you inevitably fail. Excellent. In success, we say start a little bit earlier, finish a little bit later. And if you start an hour early and you finish an hour later, that gives you an extra 2 productive hours per day, which gives you 10 hours productive time per week. And that calculates into, you're the accountants, about 500 hours of productive time per year, which gives you an extra quarter of a year above and beyond everybody else. And this is part of success. Start a little earlier, finish a little later, and you'll do more, and you increase your value. So we live in a merit-based society, and we get paid based on the amount of contribution we bring to the business and to our clients. If you contribute to your clients, what do? They want you for more hours. They want to give you more work. They reward you. So well done. It's a great strategy. And what you'll do is you'll wake up one day and you'll be 5 and 10 years down the track further than everybody else. And what they say in success is there's no wrecks on the extra mile. If you're out in front of all the traffic, there's no accidents at the front. All the accidents are behind. You get up a little bit earlier, there's no traffic. Leave a little bit later, there's a lot of traffic. Stay at work a little bit longer, you miss the traffic. Go home, you miss the traffic. So then we've got acquired attributes. AA is not Alcoholics Anonymous, although I'm sure a lot of accountants do have a few drinks from time to time. AA on the next line is acquired attributes. And acquired attributes are all those things that you've learned in your life. We have these things in relationships. Oh, that girlfriend was definitely not the right one. That boyfriend, I'm glad I'm 100 miles away from him. And in life, we will learn more from our failures than from our success. And people like Jack Welch, who ran General Electric, he was responsible for increasing their revenues by 4,000%. He said that if you want to increase your level of success, you have to double your rate of failure. You have to fail more times because you will learn what doesn't work. Because we learn by trial and error. But the more things you try, the faster you'll work out what works and what doesn't. So some of our greatest failures, like when I lost my business in 2007, it was the best thing ever because my business was operated on a handshake. It was just on trust. But what I learned later on in business, you can't do that. So I lost a little bit here, but it might have saved me millions of dollars later on. As a business coach and a consultant, I go through my clients' businesses and I ask them, where are your signed agreements? Oh, we don't have any. Oh, well, let me tell you what happened to me. And they go, thank you so much. And they go and get contracts in the business. So through a failure, I've now got a saleable piece of advice. So what are some of the wins that you've had in your life? Where have you been successful? What are the failures you've had? And what lessons have you learned? What university courses have you taken? What books have you read? These are all the acquired attributes. Have you learned to negotiate? Have you learned to sell? Have you learned to persuade? Have you learned Zero? Have you learned MYOB? Are you current with all the tax laws? These are all the acquired attributes. And you can just have one thing in here that your competitor doesn't have, and you've got a competitive advantage. So I'd like you to write down 2 of your acquired attributes. What are 2 things you've learned in your career or in your life? If you were born in Nepal and you've come to Australia, you've learned how to live in a different country because Australia is a different place. But what I find about people who are coming from Southeast Asia is that they have the qualities in their personalities that we used to have in Australia 30 years ago. When you grew up, everybody was uncle and auntie,
Exactly.
Mr. and Mrs.
That's right.
And see, in Nepal, my wife's Taiwanese, the respect for the elders is there. And see, we're coming to a time where all of our money in Australia is in the hands of the baby boomers. And if you can be more polite to them and you speak to them as Mr. and Mrs. Tolson, uncle or auntie, see, they love this. My sister-in-law calls my mother Sandra. My mum doesn't like it, but it's the daughter-in-law. She can't do much about it. Where my wife, being Taiwanese, calls my mum, mum. And when she calls her mum, my mum melts like butter. She just thinks it's the most phenomenal thing. Because my mum used to call my dad's mum, mum. And see, this is a little thing that you've got. So write down some acquired attributes.
It just happened. Maybe.
Which country were you born in?
I was born in Kenya, but I was
Okay.
brought up in India.
Okay. So here's a little secret. Who was born in Australia? Who wasn't born in Australia? Okay, good. I'll tell you your advantage. There is more self-made millionaires who were born in a foreign country than were born in Australia.
Yeah.
It's a different Australians think differently.
Yeah, because they're in their comfort zone.
Yeah.
So you come over
Take it too easy.
Yeah.
and you don't know the language, you don't know the culture, so you learn. You're in that learning state. And then what happens is because you have nothing, your back's against the wall and you fight like hell. And this is what the unfair advantage is for every person who comes to Australia. They think they're disadvantaged, but they're not. The deck's stacked against everybody else because you come in and you're like, I've got to work.
I think it's the same. Like probably if the Aussies go and work in or
I
settle in
agree.
UK or US, it'd be the same
I
as well.
agree.
Yep, because they don't have a network,
No.
Yeah.
they don't have family,
Yeah.
they can't rely on mum and dad.
Going
Yeah.
out of the comfort zone, basically.
Yeah.
So there's more self-made millionaires who are born in a foreign land. And so it is possible to succeed. And I know people in business. My uncle, my wife's uncle, him and his three brothers, they had to plant and pick rice in Taiwan in the winter. And they lived under a corrugated sheet of iron. That was it. That's how poor they were. They made enough money to get a flight to America and to go to university for one semester. And then they had to work. One brother, the youngest one, he ended up starting a company. He purchased it for $40,000. And the owner said, if you buy it for $40,000, in 1 year, it'll pay for itself. He bought that, and in 2006, he sold the company for $100 million. And he couldn't speak English. The second brother got an education, and he worked for the Bank of Taiwan. He lived out of the country for 30 years and is a Deca millionaire. But he didn't speak any English. The eldest son, he went over, no English, and he ended up leading the American Post in Ohio, which is a black American state. And he was Asian. And all the racism was there, like, what are you doing here, yellow skin?
Yeah.
And he ended up leading a team of 5,000 people, one of the most respected people in the American Postal Service. Yet wasn't born in the country and is a decamillionaire as well. Excellent. So, same as for you. What have you learned? What are your required attributes? Now, the third part of the equation is A, which is our attitude. And attitude, based on all studies, attitude is the most important requirement for success. Knowledge and skill, and we spend 17 years at school and technical colleges, knowledge and skill only contributes to 15% of your overall success. But attitude is fully 85% of your success. And in business, we used to hire for knowledge and skill and would always fire for attitude. They come in, they got certifications, they work for you, and they're a pain in the ass. And they're rude, and you get rid of them. But today, what happens in business, we first hire for attitude. If you can get somebody who's positive, optimistic, willing to learn, try new things, that person can learn any skill or acquire any knowledge. But the person who's got a closed mind won't change. So in business and in your career, we have to approach our careers in a certain way. And we say that attitude is our angle of approach. In my business, I have to be a public speaker. I have to stand up on stages in front of 750 people and talk. But if I get up on stage and I think, oh my gosh, they're not going to like me, they're going to reject me, they're going to hate me, they're going to yawn and they won't like it. If I approach my audience like that, I'm going to be unsuccessful. I'm going to fail. So what I have to do is have an attitude of a positive expectation. I have to say, these people are going to learn today. They're going to learn something that they can take away and it's going to change their life. If they just learn one new thing today, it could change their life forever. And when I go out there with that attitude, what happens? I brighten up. It's not about me. Most professional speakers think they're God and everybody's looking at them. No, the best professional speakers look at their audience and say, you're the most important person here. I'm just here to deliver a message to you. And if you take one thing away, it can change your life. So we've got to be in control of that attitude. And it's the way that we approach our career. It's also the way we approach our customers. It's the way that we approach our team. So for you, what's the attitude that you need to be successful in your career? How will you need to approach your career for ultimate success? So just write down what attitude you think you need. Is it courage? Is it integrity? Is it pride? Is it persistence? Is it resilience? What's that attitude that you need? Is it optimism? Is it enthusiasm? Could you imagine working with an unenthusiastic accountant? Because there's a lot out there, isn't there? But what happens? You get drained. You want somebody who's, hey, alive. Hey, I'm so good to see you. Thanks for coming in. We're going to save you tens of thousands of dollars this year. Oh, thanks. I'm in the right place. Now we bring this all together. So I'll give you an example here and we'll explain these as we go through. Individual human potential is what you can achieve in this lifetime. My goal is to be the world's #1 business coach who specialises in emotional intelligence. And how I'm going to get there is with my inborn attributes. I have this work ethic of a farmer. I'm going to get up earlier than my competition and I'm going to work later. And then I'm going to have the eye to build $1 million businesses like my mum. And then I acquire all these other attributes along the way. I've learned to speak. I've learned to sell. I've learned to consult. And then my attitude is to be unstoppable. Nothing will stop me, and I'll persist till I get what I want. And that's my individual human potential formula. And with that, I believe I can become the world's best business coach, specialising in emotional intelligence. Do you think with that I can get there?
Yep.
100%. There's no doubts. How are you going to do it? What's your inborn attribute, your acquired attribute, in your attitude to have business success?
Yeah.
So imagine a client that you approach and you feel grateful for their business.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
Yeah.
for doing business with us.
Yeah.
Do you think the client will want to come back?
Yeah.
How many times have you gone to a shop? Yeah, okay, yeah, there's your pen, $5. Or thank you so much. You could have shopped anywhere,
Yeah.
but you spent your $5 here. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you next time.
Appreciation.
You'd want to come
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
And this will help you achieve your goal.
Yeah.
And remember, in professional services like yours, sometimes the only competitive advantage you have is you. What's the difference? I'm going to do your tax return. I'm going to do your BAS. But the only thing you can get here that you can't get there is me. And if they like you, they'll stay.
Yeah. That's true.
You'll get there.
I had patience and learned to listen to people because I think
I'm a
that's-
very patient accountant who listens to my client and
I
the
do.
attitude.
I do, yeah. Be patient. So
And I listen to my client's
Yeah.
needs.
Yeah.
And what's the attitude?
Patience.
And patience. Is that the type of accountant you want? Or do you want an obnoxious accountant who doesn't listen to you?
You don't
No.
want obnoxious, so you do want someone, yeah.
Exactly.
Listen, yeah.
So what you have is that as you approach your clients with that, you become unstoppable because people can't compete at that.
Yeah.
They can get a $97 tax return, but they can't get you in your lifetime of experience. And they can't get that experience. That's why people will pay $30,000 for first class travel because of the experience.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
They can fly economy
Yeah.
and they get there at the same time. But they will pay $30,000 on Etihad
Yeah.
to go in comfort and have that experience. I used to lead a team of 17,000 cabin crew, and I'd transport millionaires and billionaires around the world, paying $25,000 and $30,000 to sit in first class. And the most important thing for them was the smile, to make them feel welcome, to use their name. Mr. Tolson, thank you for joining us today. You could have flown any other airline, but you chose Emirates. I'm going to make sure you have a great experience. And you know what? These people said, all I need, Daniel, is just one cup of coffee 20 minutes before landing. And that's what I want my experience to be. You give them the coffee 20 minutes before landing, and they're like, this was the best flight ever. And they slept the whole way.
Yeah.
So you treat your customers like
Yeah.
that, and you will succeed.
I put so work ethics, client communication, and being determined.
Excellent. Very good. So you've all got yours, and I want you to keep sharing these with one another today. And remember that you can become unstoppable in your career as you apply these inborn attributes, these acquired attributes, and just choose your attitude on a daily basis. So let me wrap up by saying this: your highest income earning years are in the future. The greatest times of your life are still yet to come. And when you learn emotional intelligence, you can be unstoppable and achieve anything that you want. So I hope you enjoyed our time together today, and I wish you a very successful future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Good. Thanks, Amy.